Welcome back to the Athletes Podcast. This is episode 102 featuring Jake MacDonald. The pro baseball player has played over in Germany, down in the States, a little bit in Italy, wants to go to Australia. The guy's basically played everywhere. My old high school, elementary school buddy, good times in this episode. We reminisced about playing ball back in the day, the AL wildcard race that is absolutely insane right now. Who deserves the MVP? Whether it's Otani, Guerrero, you'll find out in the episode who Jake thinks deserves it, and what the differences are in pro ball overseas, how to get into pro ball if you're trying to. Just a great episode. That next generation that we're always looking to educate and entertain certainly will be. This is episode 102 featuring Jake MacDonald of the Athletes Podcast. Here we go. 102, episode 102, featuring Jake MacDonald from White Rock, British Columbia. Thanks for coming on the pod, man. Appreciate a little high school, elementary school reminiscing here. Figured, you're spending so much time overseas playing ball in Barrie, everywhere else. Figured it was the least we could do to showcase what Jake MacDonald's all about on the Athletes Podcast, man. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, you bet, man. It's really cool to have this reunion with you. It's been a long time since we've been able to chat some baseball, chat some sports. So I'm looking forward to it, man.
Yeah, how's the last 6 months been for you? You spent some time in Barrie. You were over in the German Bundesliga. Give me the lowdown. How was it?
Yeah, it's been wild, man. I've had the opportunity to play overseas, so that's what I've done the last 2 summers. So the last 2 summers I spent in a town called Zolingen. It's just outside of the city of Cologne. So that's kind of the well-known city around there. Super fun. Playing overseas is one of the coolest things I've ever had the opportunity to do. But at the end of the season there, I was able to hop over to Barrie. They're the Intercounty Baseball League in Ontario. They were delayed a little bit because of COVID. And it gave me an opportunity to play in both leagues this summer. So yeah, it was a crazy 6 months, but a super fun 6 months.
Yeah, I think Cologne, Germany is where Leon Draisaitl's from. On the Edmonton.
They love him there.
Yeah, Biz is always trying to get a cologne made by Leon Draisaitl because he's from Cologne. I don't know, guy's a meathead, but yeah, either way, yeah.
Quick fact, the first ever cologne was produced in the city of Cologne, and there's a big building right downtown. Where it was
that would make sense as to why the name was named after that, I'm assuming.
It does.
Nicely that. You come to the Athletes Podcast for info on how to train, nutrition, and you end up finding out about eau de toilette, as they call it in French.
Hey, learn a little bit about Cologne.
Yeah, exactly. Dude, what was the difference like for you going Germany? You also played down in the States. You played in Canada. You feel like you've played ball everywhere around the world. What's the difference between the leagues? Where's the best competition? Where's the best beer?
Yeah, here I'll give you the rundown on the baseball first, and then I'll tell you about the beer after.
There you go.
Yeah, so in Germany, the competition is quite good. You get a lot of guys who have played minor league ball who come over to Europe to extend their careers. And the same would be in the Intercounty Baseball League in Ontario. They're both semi-professional baseball leagues that I've been able to play in. So you get a lot of guys who have played in the minors, a lot of guys who have retired but had legitimate careers. So the competition's good. I think that one of the misconceptions is that if you go over to Europe, that you're giving up on your career. And that's just not the case. There are so many guys who have gone over there and performed, and the fact is the leagues are good, so they'll end up back. But the competition's good comparatively to college and here in Canada. It's pretty legit. There's a lot more professional talent there than you'd think.
And I'm trying to imagine you're a Canadian going overseas, you're in a new country, you don't speak German as far as I know. What was that like? I mean, I know we've talked to Marissa Graham, for instance, who played over in the Swedish Hockey League. Were there difficulties playing overseas? Do you have a language barrier? Was that an adjustment you had to make?
So one of the things that's really cool about Europe is they start, in a lot of countries, Germany included, they start learning English in kindergarten. So anybody above the age of 30 or under the age of 30 or 40, typically they're going to know English, which is really helpful when you're trying to learn the culture. And the other thing that I had is I had a host family while I was there, and they spoke very good English, so they were able to give me the essentials to, I don't know, buy a sandwich or use the bathroom, you know.
Yeah, the
Uh,
essentials.
yeah, the essentials. So, yeah, no, I mean, there. I wouldn't say the language barrier is much of an issue, but adapting to the culture is definitely it's cool, but it can be tough at times.
I'm curious how your time down in NAIA, Texas A&M, like give me what that experience was like coming from Canada, having played a couple years at a Douglas College, captain there, put up some good numbers, decided you want to go down below the 49th parallel, play down there. What was that adjustment like?
Yeah, well, when I went to school at Douglas College, so that's a JUCO here in Vancouver, we played in an American conference called the NWAC, which was colleges from Washington and Oregon. It was good competition because we were the only Canadian school there. So in terms of the competition level, I would say, I mean, NAI is obviously a step up from junior college ball, um, but the competition was still good when I was playing at Douglas. Now, off the field, everything is totally different down there. It was a total culture shock, and I say that being a guy who has traveled all over Europe. Texas might have been one of the biggest culture shocks that I've ever experienced. And it's crazy because I've spent time in Switzerland, I've spent time in Germany, I've spent time in Italy, and I would say that their values are, I would say, closer to ours. And I love my Texans, I love them, but just very very different competition. It was good, man. Texans can play ball.
So elaborate on that a little bit. Like down in Texas, is it the Wild West? Like, are you just free reign? Like people pulling out guns? Like, give me the lowdown. Like, what's going on there?
It's definitely, I mean, I wouldn't go as far as to say that. It's just very different than living in Canada, where, I mean, obviously the gun control thing is one thing, but just aside from that, I think the country twang, the southern drawl, just it kind of mimics their personality, which is very different from what we experience here in Vancouver, and a lot of what Europe is. So I mean, it's kind of hard to pinpoint. I'm sure you can have a picture in your head of what those differences might be. But yeah, it was fun nonetheless. I had a lot of fun there.
Where's the best food? You've traveled everywhere, Italy, Germany, like Texas. You get some Kentucky Fried Chicken. Like, where are you?
Italy is the best food that you will ever have. It
Okay.
is crazy to see the consistency across the board. I mean, I guess it's true in anything, but if there's competition to make better food, it's gonna make all the better food, you know.
Hmm.
And yeah, it was good, man. Very very good.
True. Good to know. I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't talk about the wild card race between the Yankees, Red Sox, Blue Jays. Jordan brought it up here. I have to dive into it here. The AL East is always just ridiculous, but this year is absolutely insane. Toronto's a game out. The Yankees are a game above the Red Sox at 89 wins. Boston's at 88 and Toronto's at 87. Like, how are you when you're watching these games? Like, how are you even wrapping your head around it?
Well, I mean, I'm a massive Jays fan, and I have been for my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
So my heart is beating every moment of this. I don't even know what to think some days, because some days I think they're completely out of it, and then the next thing you know, they're right back in it. And yeah, I don't know. I would really love to see the Jays make a push here. I think they've got the tools to do it, but obviously it's going to depend on this series. I think this series with the Yankees is going to decide it all.
Yeah, first game starts tonight. 3 game series. We'll find out. I just remembered. Do you remember when we went down for our grade 12 Mariners game?
You know what? I've been asked this question a lot from my high school buddies.
Yeah.
In classic baseball form, I didn't get to go to the Mariners game because I was at baseball.
Ah,
I
man.
know.
Dude, man, that was like one of our high school things. Grade 12, we did that. Man, I remember yelling at Cole Calhoun from the Los Angeles Angels from the first baseline, and we were lighting him up the entire game. It was ridiculous. I have never chirped so hard at a player, and we got his attention for a while. It was a pretty good time.
Hey, we
I may
love it
have
out there, man. When guys are giving it to us, it just makes it all the more fun.
Right? So that's another thing. Like baseball is a unique sport in the sense that there is no barrier between the fans and the athletes, right? The ice hockey has the boards that has the glass in between. Basketball, I guess there isn't. So, I'll just retract that statement now. But I mean, when it comes to baseball, you can yell right at the guy and the guy's probably going to be able to hear you. Obviously, that's something that you can hear. And are you engaging with that at times?
I mean, you're right. I mean, I think about football, they've got the benches and stuff. So there's a lot of sports where you don't have that close contact with the players. But me personally, I love it. I love being able to interact with the players. I love joking with them. I think that the difference is if you're a confident baseball player, you enjoy it. If you're maybe, I don't know, putting up an 0 for 4, an 0 for 8, an 0 for 12, then those chirps can get to you a little bit. But again, I mean, you're an athlete, right? So you have to learn how to deal with that stuff. And I mean, that stuff is what makes sports,
100%. How did you kind of alter your goal? Because I know in high school, like your ball was life. You knew from the beginning you wanted to be a ball player, but you've now become a fitness instructor for youth teams. You're working for baseball jobs overseas as a social media guy. Like, how have you evolved from being, simply put, a ball player to now someone who is attractive, not only as an athlete, but also as a resource off the field, providing, TikTok, social media support? Like, dive into that, because I think that's an interesting aspect, and you've made yourself a hot commodity being able to provide that on top of your very good baseball skills.
Yeah, well, I think for me, I always wanted to play in the big leagues. That was always my goal from a young age. But I also think that near the end of high school, I started to get a better idea of what my skills really were. I think I knew by the time I was second year college, I was never going to make it to the MLB. But I also knew that I never wanted to stop playing baseball, and I never wanted to stop being a part of baseball. So you touched on it, but Baseball Jobs Overseas is a website that I work for. We help place players all over the world. We've had 1,400 plus contracts signed in 34 countries. So I started working with them, and they gave me a lot of opportunities to continue playing in ways that I had never really imagined before. And I think that's one of the things that I really want to get out to people, is that just because you don't get drafted, just because you don't get signed to an affiliated team, it doesn't mean that it's the end of the road. And for me, I just loved baseball so much that I knew I was going to have to look a little bit harder in order to continue playing and being a part of the sport. So like you said, whether it's picking up some coaching hours, whether it's picking up some fitness training, social media, whatever it is, if it's part of the game, I want to be a part of it. And I think that's the one reason why I've been able to pursue those things, is because my skills weren't as good as Javi Baez or Yadier Molina or any of those dudes, right? Like I'm a kid that loves baseball, that didn't have that natural gift, but I've been able to make it work.
Hey, I will counter that by saying, you definitely played some solid ball throughout your career. I've seen some highlights. You're a pretty legit player. And your coach from Douglas, Kavanaugh Whiteley, even stated, Jake played for me for 2 years here and came in as an average player with average tools. Due only to his dedication to the weight room and training schedule did he exceed expectations in every aspect. So I think that's a little snippet that showcases the kudos that you deserve. And you mentioned...
Yeah, and shout out Cav. Big,
yeah.
That's a big one right there.
There you go. I always like to put in a little snippet,
Absolutely.
pump the tires a bit, get everyone feeling good.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean to say that I'm not a successful baseball player. I am a very successful baseball player, and I've been able to put up big numbers in some pretty legitimate leagues. But I think that that's something that's come just from my work ethic. Not to toot my own horn, but it's definitely something that I have worked really, really hard on in order to get to where I am now.
Yeah, obviously humble is an understatement, but when it comes to, like you mentioned, Molina, Ramirez, those guys, like, was there someone growing up that you idolized that you thought was going to be that guy that you wanted to emulate and be just like?
Yeah, I mean, Yadier Molina from a very young age. That's why whenever the first player comes out of my mouth, it's always Yadier Molina. The way he manages the game is just unmatched. The way that guy controls a defense, the way he hits, the way he comes out, and just I really like his don't take no for an answer attitude. And that's something that I've always tried to emulate in my game because I'm a catcher as well. But yeah, he's definitely been the guy that I've looked up to the most.
You play basic. You're a utility. You can play catcher. You can play outfield. You just got to spend some time left, right, a little bit of center even there. I noticed. You have a favorite play or moment that you've witnessed in baseball so far that you've been a part of or just seen occur?
Yeah, there was one time when I was playing over in Germany, and we were fighting for the playoffs. It was a tough race, and there was a play where they had the tying run coming home from third, and I just remember that the heat of the game was so high at this moment, and there was a runner on third, 2 out or 1 out, fly ball to center field. I'm catching, and I know the guy is going to be tagging, so I'm kind of keeping an eye. So it's about, I don't know, mid center field. And he just came up gunning and right on the money. I can't even tell you the feeling when you get that perfect one hop as a catcher and it just comes in and it's bang, bang, but you know you got him. Man, that's got to be the best feeling in baseball. That one especially stuck out in my mind just because, I mean, it was the last out of the game, but there have been some throws from the outfield that, oh man, it's a thing of beauty.
Yeah, that's one of the interesting ones. Like as a catcher, it brings up a good point. Like you have to put your body on the line more than any other player on the field because, baseball already has a bad rep for guys, not needing to be in the best shape or like being the greatest athletes in the world, which is a whole other argument that we could
That's a
probably
whole
talk
other
about for hours.
discussion.
Yeah, and I don't know whether I necessarily agree with it fully, but you know, when you're going in, you have to be prepared to get absolutely clobbered at home plate.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, luckily you can't get run over anymore. So
Yeah.
I mean, you still have to be able to defend yourself. You still have to be able to protect the line. And I think that uh, that's one of the things that's really changed in the last few years is because of that you can't run the catcher. For a long time, they used to just have the beefiest guy on the field back there because you're going to get run over like a bowling pin, you know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not the thickest guy, but that's kind of what you see now out of catchers a lot is more athletic builds because you have to be able to move, you have to be able to block, throw, but you don't have to take that guy running down the third baseline trying to end your life anymore.
Yeah, there's some serious highlights on Sports Center that are pretty incredible. When I
Like
try and I'm thinking back, what's the hardest type of pitch to catch?
the two-seamer from a righty that is breaking down right into your thumb. That one is the worst. Or the lefty slider. I don't know if you've seen
Okay.
Chris Sale's slider, the one that goes from like the lefty batter's box past the guy's right foot.
Yeah.
Can you imagine being a catcher trying to bring your glove all the way across the strike zone or even just have any idea where that ball is going to end up? That is definitely one of the hardest pitches of baseball.
It's so interesting because I'm like a hockey goalie, so I'm thinking like, from my point of view, all I have to do is stop the puck at the end of the day. That's my job. As a catcher, you're also having to try and place that mitt in the strike zone when you catch that ball, correct?
Yeah, that's definitely something that is like a primary skill now as a catcher. A lot of the analytics show that how well you can receive dictates how well you can defend. So if
Mm.
you can show that ball for a strike more often than not, then those other skills become less relevant because there's maybe 200 pitches in a game, but you might only have 3 or 4 or 5 balls in the dirt that you have to block. So that's where the big difference is between being a catcher and being a goalie.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes total sense. Jordan brought up another good point here in the sense that with baseball diamonds across North America, they're all different sizes, unique. You got the green monster in Boston. Is that the case in Europe as well?
It is pretty much everywhere you go, whether it's semi-professional or professional, you're going to have some differences in the fields. And I think that's one of the things that makes baseball unique, because you'll show up to a park one day, you'll hit batting practice, and half of the balls leave the park. And then you'll show up there and you'll hit the hardest ball you've ever hit in your life, and it'll just land right in the center fielder's glove, which is crazy to think about, but it's one of those things that makes baseball what it is.
Favorite ballpark that you've been to so far?
Favorite ballpark that I've been to is definitely the Rogers Center. And I say that not because I'm biased. I've been to plenty of MLB stadiums. Rogers Center has it all. I mean, the CN Tower right behind. Come on, you can't.
Yeah.
But in terms of stadiums that I've played in, the Bonn Capitals in the German Bundesliga, they have a killer field. It is super cool to see these sick fields showing up all over Europe in a place where you would never even imagine a baseball diamond being. And then you show up and it's just this crazy stadium. Yeah, man, it was super fun.
Yeah, it makes it, an interesting thing to look at. And as you're traveling different stadiums, whether it's hockey, baseball, football, whatever the case, like that's one of the things that sports has that is super unique. And I think people appreciate that sometimes more than the game that's even happening. I know you brought up the Rogers Center, and what was that game a couple weeks ago that I was at that the Jays hit the grand slam and then hit another 3-run home run at the end. Do you remember that one?
The craziest game I think I've ever seen. And I mean, okay, maybe I'll take that back, but it was, a 6-run comeback in the last 2 innings with a grand slam. That had some 2015 vibes.
Okay, so I'm glad you brought that up because I've had some very fortunate success in the past couple Jays games that I've been a part of. That being the one that I just most recently had, obviously grand slam, 6-run deficit, whatever the case. Crazy game. Obviously playoff implications were running high. So that was a great game, but also 2015 when Josh Donaldson hit 3 dingers in that game. I was also present for that, sitting up there in the...
God, no way.
Dude, I was in the nosebleed. So, part of me is kind of nervous about going to Jays games now because I'm either going to be super disappointed or get the most incredible experience of my life. But I feel like the latter isn't going to happen as often now. So, I don't know. I might cut my losses and only go infrequently when people visit,
Hey, man, I was at a perfect game. So every game that I go to for the rest of my life is never going to match that one. So you just got to get over it at some point.
Who was that? Where'd you watch that?
Fernandez in Seattle.
Nice. Dope. He was the king.
The king.
That guy's a stud.
Yeah, we were sitting in King's Court for that one. It was awesome.
Wow. Who was that against?
It was against the Rays.
The Rays, who are also a good baseball team now. That AL East is just crazy. I know we brought it up, but so what's ahead for Jake MacDonald? Because obviously we've talked about you and I are the same age at 24, 97 born. I'll say it again, the best year ever to be born. I think it's produced the best athletes ever. I'm going to make it a statement. That's if I do anything with the Athletes podcast, that'll be it. But
I will absolutely agree with that statement.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. That's what I thought. Drew Hunter, episode 99 was also in 97. So, what's the horizon look like for you? Like goals as far as 5-10 year plan? You want to still be involved? Obviously you've mentioned here that you're as an instructor already, you've done some coaching. Is that the plan moving forward? Do you love the game that much that's what you want to be doing?
I do. I'm not exactly sure how I want to be a part of the game, but I do know that I want to be a part of the game. One of my mottos is when it comes to baseball, just say yes to everything, as long as I have time for everything. So whether it's playing overseas, whether it's taking a coaching job, whether it's taking a marketing job, anywhere I can, I try to say yes, because I do believe that a career will fall into my lap at some point. Obviously, I've had a lot of success on TikTok and with baseball jobs overseas. So that is something that I could potentially continue, and I would love to do so. But in terms of playing, I'm probably going to keep playing until they rip the jersey off my back. I have no intentions of stopping anytime soon. So I think that you said 1 year, 2 year, 5 year, 10 year, I would say this upcoming season, I'll probably be playing again in Europe, whether that's the Czech Republic, France, Germany, not 100% sure yet, but I'm sure some offers will come up here soon. Beyond that, I do plan on hopping from Europe to Australia for the next
Nice.
years. The winter season is the Australian season. Obviously, if you've seen anything in the media recently, Australia is not an option right now. But that is the game plan, is to hop from those two places. And the other thing too is I'm going to be an Italian citizen here soon. I've been working on that for a little bit. So that
Dang.
opens up a lot of doors in Europe to continue playing and potentially living there as well.
The food was that good, eh? You needed to
It
get a
was that
citizenship.
good.
That's crazy. Day in the life, like game day, what do your superstitions look like? Are you chewing 6 packs of gum? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, I know that's a typical baseball player question because we seem to be the most superstitious athletes there are. I try to not have superstitions because I think that a superstition, if you don't perform it, then you're in your head about not being able to perform in the game. So instead, what I like to try to do is develop routines. There are routines that I like to do when I show up to the park. I show up 3-4 hours early, try to lay out in the sun, do a stretch, go through my warm up nice and slow, meditation, visualize, all that good stuff. Yeah, I wouldn't say necessarily superstitions as much as routines.
Yeah, that's what was it Bruce Boudreau who said that as well? He said, he likes to refer to those superstitions as habits. Yeah, Jordan just meant it to me right there. But yeah, it's crazy because a lot of athletes over the years have been, Crosby actually, who Riley Sheehan brought up last episode, was talking about how Crosby's super superstitious, in the sense that he's, down to a minute by minute, got his water bottle, next throwing it into the garbage can, whatever it is. Like, it's crazy how different athletes go into those superstitions, or as we are now calling them, routines. I'm always curious because it's sometimes can lead to, like you said, guys getting in their head. And obviously as a goalie, that was something that people were always questioning me about. So I like bringing it up on these episodes as well. What do you look for when you are joining a team? Because you're going to have multiple offers. Do you look at the roster? Are you looking at the coaching staff? Like, I'm always trying to bring this back to the next generation of athletes. What we do, our goal with the Athletes Podcast, is to educate and entertain. Obviously, we're doing a bit of both on this episode, but how do you approach getting that contract overseas, getting it in Australia, wherever the case is? What's the steps necessary to go about that? Obviously, working for baseball jobs overseas, we'll just plug that right away. But, for the average individual who is playing JUCO, NAIA, NCAA baseball, how do they get to that next step and cross the pond?
Well, from a marketing standpoint, I will go ahead and let you know that you can sign up for baseball jobs overseas at baseballjobsoverseas.com. Basically, what you do is you sign up for a profile. Your profile becomes public, and then there are over 500 teams that have access to your full baseball resume. Same thing for softball players. They have softball teams overseas have access to your full resumes, which is super, super cool. Often what will happen is teams will reach out to you more than you reach out to them, which is, I think, a huge shock for a lot of people when they sign up for the site and then their emails are blowing up from teams all over the world. I cannot actually imagine the minute when I got my first email and I was just blown away. I got an offer in Sweden. And I was like, oh my God, Sweden? I could go play baseball in Sweden. But like I said, I mean, you're going to get multiple offers. So you kind of have to narrow down what you're looking for. What I would suggest to anybody who's, and this applies to colleges, if you're a baseball player who's looking to go to college, or whether you're a baseball player that's looking to go overseas, the number one thing that you have to look for is comfort. Because regardless of, I mean, when it comes to money, you have to get paid, but a lot of times you're going to get very similar offers in terms of pay. So what you really have to look for is the place that you're going to be the most comfortable, because that's going to be the place where you're going to be the most successful. If you hate your coach, if you hate your apartment, if you hate your city, chances are you're probably not going to play that well. So if you can pick a place that is comfortable, and you know that it's comfortable, you're getting a good apartment, you have good teammates, a good coach, a beautiful city. Now, those things go a very, very long way towards your overall performance on the field.
Makes total sense. I mean, your environment at the end of the day is going to dictate how you feel, both from a physical and mental standpoint. So if you can control that and make it the best possible situation for you to be in, then it's a no-brainer. You're going to end up performing well on the field as well. Do they still have a DH?
They do. I'm pretty sure everywhere in the world has a DH except the National League.
Gotcha. So do you think that's going to be eliminated?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I love it just because I love baseball and I love the traditional baseball. But do I think they're going to get rid of it? Yeah, I think they're going to get a DH in the National League.
Yeah, it just seems like the traditionalist fan is probably going to be the only one that's super upset about that. But I'm sure they'll get over it.
Right? So yeah, give them what they want.
Right? It's true. That is such a good point. Like, people want to see home runs. I mean, unless you're watching Angels baseball with what's his name, the Angels pitcher, I should know that.
Ohtani.
Yeah, that guy is crazy. Okay, so if you had to pick Vladdy Guerrero, Ohtani, who's getting your MVP vote?
I think in any other season, I'd say Vladdy, but the fact is nobody has done what Shohei Ohtani has done. If you think about it, that would be like Tom Brady going on the defensive line and going and trying to sack guys, like what sport does that happen in where a guy can pitch and hit, which is two completely opposite things? It's never been done before. Babe Ruth did it back in, 1920. There's no way that you can give it to Vladdy in a season like this, just because it is something that we've never seen before.
Yeah, it's so tough to not have your bias from the Jays come into play, because
I know, and I'm a huge Jays fan too, so it hurts. It hurts.
Yeah, to say it. Yeah, it is. It's true, and what Ohtani is doing is, you're so right. If Tom Brady had 6 picks, was returning punts, that's the equivalent, right?
That's what I'm saying.
It's it'll be really interesting to see, if he can continue to produce like that, year over year, because he's got 40 plus home runs, 30 plus home runs, something ridiculous.
45.
Yeah,
something like that. Ridiculous.
It's insane. If you could choose one moment in sport, because I know you're not just a baseball fan or a baseball player, whatever it is, one moment in sports that you look back and you're like, man, that would have been cool to witness in person. Is there anything that you think of?
I mean, it's every Canadian is going to have the same answer, but the golden goal would have just been insane to see in person. That, I get goosebumps just thinking about that. And I was just sitting on the couch with my parents watching that. If I had to pick one moment, the golden goal, Sidney Crosby in the Olympics, absolutely, that would be my number one.
Yeah, Jordan's shaking his head over here too. He's in full agreement. It's one that you go back on, you're like, man, I didn't realize it. What were we in 8th grade?
It was a long time ago.
Yeah, 2010, 7th or 8th grade. I remember my mom trying to drag me to go downtown to skip a day of school to go watch the Olympics. And she's like, well, you don't want to go? And I'm like, I don't really have an interest. Like, not realizing the fact that the Olympics may never be in my hometown again, and I may never be able to witness these incredible athletes in real life action. But nonetheless, something that was incredible to witness. I remember being there, like, just the amount of national pride that was there and present in Vancouver, especially after that, was just second to none.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine. I mean, you made a huge mistake by not going down that way. I couldn't even, I would still hate, I wouldn't hate myself, but I would be very disappointed in myself to this day if I missed out on the opportunity to be a part of that. I think I had baseball or something.
Yeah, it was baseball or something. I don't know whether I was going down that day, but nonetheless, like, one of those days during the Olympics would have been pretty cool just to see the atmosphere down in Vancouver, the Olympic Village, etc.
It was fun. I went down there. I didn't get to go down there for the golden goal, but I was down there for a little bit. And,
yeah, it was pretty cool. Hey,
it was fun.
Jake, man, I appreciate you coming on so much. We always wrap up every episode, as you know, asking our guest what their biggest piece of advice would be to the next generation of athletes. And I know you touched on the fact that, for everyone, wherever they go, it's got to be comfortable. But I'd love for you to maybe scratch that surface even more and give your biggest piece of advice for that next gen and what'll really make a difference for them.
The biggest piece of advice is just to keep an open mind. Opportunities come in so many different shapes and forms. And I think that what a lot of athletes, especially young athletes, do is they get very one-minded and they're not willing to think outside the box. There are opportunities to play the sport you love at a competitive level, no matter where you are in the world, no matter what sport you play, no matter what your skills are. If you want to compete, there's always going to be opportunities to compete. And in my case, there's going to be opportunities to travel too. So just keep your mind open. It's going to come. Just keep looking for it.
Yeah, I'll have to come visit when you're an Italian citizen, get some good pizza, pasta, gelato, whatever else they make there, hey?
I got you.
Appreciate it. Jake MacDonald, the 102nd episode of the Athletes Podcast. Thanks so much for coming on, man. Really appreciate it.
You bet. It's been fun.
Thank you, folks, for tuning into the 102nd episode of the Athletes Podcast featuring Jake MacDonald. If you liked the episode, share it with someone who will benefit from it. I'm sure there are ball players out there who will certainly enjoy the insights that Jake provided, not only from a personal standpoint, but also from a professional standpoint. I mean, the guy is able to do this for a living now, whether that's playing ball, doing social media for teams, recruiting players, you name it. The game of baseball is better because of Jake MacDonald. Thank you, folks, for tuning in. We sincerely appreciate it on the Athletes Podcast. It means the world to us. And I mean, it means the world to us when I say that. Jordan Maslin is our producer. He really likes it when you like the episode. Ian Singleton is our videographer. He wants you to subscribe to the Athletes Podcast on all social media streaming platforms. And my name's David Stark, your host. I just appreciate every single one of you for tuning in. Thank you guys again. Bye.